Welcome aboard to the Mars Society Ambassador Briefing. Today is September 12th, 2023. I'm James Melton, Chief Ambassador of the Mars Society, and today we have some breaking news you will all want to know. But first, we're going to hear from two of our ambassadors, and tune in to look for some pointers that you can use in your own presentations. First off, to start it this afternoon is Ambassador Ed Heisler. Ed has been a speaker at the Mars Society conventions. His focus is to bring Star Trek to reality. Now, before you start chuckling, listen to what the focus really is. It's to help and encourage our species of all races, backgrounds, occupations, women and men, to go where no humans have gone before. And that is, of course, to Mars and beyond. Ed will be presenting a program at the 2023 Mars Society Convention in Tempe, Arizona at Arizona State University. Today's going to give us a 5 to 6 minute glimpse into his program, kind of a teaser, if you will. So Ed, if you would, take it away for a short period and give us some insight into your program coming up in Tempe.
Well, actually, this year, we are celebrating the 25th anniversary of the founding of the Mars Society. We were founded in August 1998. It's been 25 years. And if you haven't reread it, I encourage all of our ambassadors, all of our members, to reread our founding declaration, because it could have been written yesterday, just about. The declaration was passed by about 700 representatives from 40 nations at our founding convention. And in the declaration, our founders listed the many major reasons on why we need to get to Mars, humans on Mars. And the most striking one, the concluding one, this is the declaration. Find it online at our website, and please read it again. I read it every year. It helps remind me, although I don't need reminding, on why I and the rest of us are in the Mars Society. The declaration concludes listing many reasons why we need to go to Mars. It concludes by saying we must go for humanity. And what do they mean? What do we mean by that? They say, or said, our founders, that we must go for our humanity. Human beings are more than merely another kind of animal. We are life's messenger. Alone of the creatures of our planet, Earth, we have the ability to continue the work of creation by bringing life to Mars and Mars to life. In doing so, we shall make a profound statement as to the precious worth of the human race and every member of the human race. And they concluded their declaration explaining how we, as Mars members and as Mars ambassadors, what we can do to advance our human exploration of Mars. They simply said in their declaration, human actions are not inevitable, but must be planned, advocated, and achieved by hard work. We call upon all other individuals and organizations of like-minded people to join with us in furthering this great enterprise. And that's where we, and as Mars ambassadors, fit right in. We are the only, just think about this for a moment. We are the only organization on this entire planet, there are no others, that is focused like a laser on the objective of sending human explorers to Mars. There's no other show in town. We're it. Unfortunately, we are it. We are here. We are growing, and we have now tremendous new opportunities, potential to grow and expand our influence. Because we already time me. I forgot to time you. Tell me when I got 2 minutes left, please.
You're good, Ed. That's
Okay,
fine. You're good.
Okay. We have an opportunity now, like we've never had before. Well, first of all, let me point this out. Because the Mars Society exists, because of a quarter of a century of hard work, we have a plan to go to Mars. We have a starship being built to take humans to Mars. I think that only exists. It's becoming a reality in the big part because we exist. One of our founding members happens to be Elon Musk, and we encouraged him to go out and, yes, if you can, try and build a rocket that can take us there. And, okay, I'll read up on rockets and I'll find out how to build one. And he has. He and Gwynne Shotwell and the thousands of SpaceX employees who are responsible for the Starship. So there's a lot more now that needs to be done and can be done. I'm wearing this shirt, which is my favorite shirt. Mars, here we come. And with the appropriate patch.
The patch is excellent.
That's our patch.
Yes.
That's the patch you designed. Yes. I got to buy a few more for some other shirts. But anyhow, we'll be able to have a new shirt, I think, before this decade is out, put out by the Mars Society. Mars, we're here. Glad to see you. We're not here to conquest, or we're not colonialists. We're not going to try and capture Martian microbes to colonize you. That'd be, what's that? That's dumb. We're there. We're going there to explore, to learn everything we can about Mars, to find out if there is or was past life on Mars. We hope microbes have more than one cell. I hope, maybe several. That would be better than just a single cell microbe. A bunch of cells. Not enough to create a mammal, of course, but maybe a tiny insect be okay. Well, we can now take the next step toward organizing, reaching, talking to, and bringing into this what will be a growing movement to send humans to Mars. And we can, I think we will lead it. And Mars ambassadors, thank you, James, for setting up the program. Good timing, just in time. We need it now because we have many different talents, different races, different histories, different backgrounds. Some of us tend to be Republicans, conservative. The others are liberal Democrats. I even met a couple of socialists at the last convention, and they were happy with working with Republicans or Democrats or anybody on something we all agree on. That's what unites us, Mars, going to Mars. We can have civil, friendly discussions and debates among ourselves on other issues, global warming, racism, whatever. Okay, that's fine. That's great, because we can have our civil disagreements and discussions on political issues and go to support in a campaign, whatever. But we work together and build together and organize together, and the Mars ambassadors are going to lead this effort now internationally. A good example, a great example of the progress on that front is, of course, in Mongolia, where they're between a rock and a hard place, so to speak, Russia and China, and they're surviving. And they got one hell of a Mars chapter going. We have chapters on all the continents, four chapters in Africa, of course, in Europe and Asia, South America, Latin America, North America. And we're going to increase our chapter, grow those chapters in the United States too.
It sounds to me, Ed,
I talk, okay.
Sounds
come
to
to
me
the
like you
talk.
have a potpourri of ideas to share at the conference,
Yeah,
and that you're going to have a good discussion with the people who are there about a variety of topics. So when you're at the convention, make sure to tune in to Ed Heisler. Ed, thank you so much for taking the time today to give us a little teaser on what's going on.
and
And
okay,
before,
that's all it is. And if you disagree with me at the convention, that's fine. We can go have a drink afterwards and talk about it, whatever,
well, that sounds like an excellent idea.
as long as you're buying.
All right, excellent. Now, before we get to our breaking news, which I believe James Burke, we've twisted his arm to give us some information on what's coming up. We have Ambassador Sydney Phillips. And Sydney, I'm looking at you here, and you look like you're ready to go. Sydney is an entrepreneur on a mission to push humanity forward. She has been named as one of the top 100 U.S. business leaders and earned the title of Young Female Entrepreneur of the Year. At the end of this month, Sydney will be giving a speech at an AI conference, Artificial Intelligence Conference at Texas Christian University. Today, she'll give us just a short segment of her presentation, and tune into her. She's a keynote speaker, she's a platform performer, and we're pleased to have her as one of our ambassadors. Good to see you here, Sydney.
Hi, good to see you.
The platform
Yes.
is yours.
Of course. Well, I messaged you just later last week. Just got the speaking gig on Thursday, so I am still in the middle of speech writing and trying to figure out all what I'm going to say. The conference is focused on emerging tech. So we're, really covering the basis in terms of augmented and virtual reality, AI, networks and sensors, and synthetic biology. I'm kind of tackling the AR VR, which is of course more my platform. I own a virtual reality company that helps to communicate and visualize these unbuilt spaces. We worked primarily within the real estate industry, but we've worked a little bit with James on some of the VR stuff and different projects and what have you. I don't have as much data from that as I would like to have. So as part of, kind of reaching out earlier of last week, I think that my focus is really going to be pushing the conference and pushing membership. I'm going to highlight a little bit about what you guys have done on Mars VR, the MDRS VR, and some of the applications of how that can be used. This conference is really kind of a bigger overview of emerging tech. I don't think that it fits the space quite in the way where I can just walk in and start talking about Mars. It's kind of one of those where I need to talk about the technology and then segment into a couple of different ways that we use it. I'll be using Zook, my company, just as one of how we've used it in real estate. And then I'll be using Mars VR as another example of how these technologies can be used for the aerospace industry as well. So I'm really looking forward to it. I'm going to push the Mars VR and certainly the conference. Just outside of that, also membership. I know that was one of our initial goals, just in terms of VR and AR, of just like trying to get more members. That's what I have so far. If there's any suggestions on kind of what is coming up, I know, James, you have an announcement later on, and it sounds like it might be something to do with tech. So I'm interested.
Yeah, we should talk about that. But yeah, absolutely. It sounds like a really exciting event you're going to do, and we'd love to support you. And awesome that you're going to feature Mars VR and the MDRS work that we've done. That's so cool.
I'm putting together right now, I'm going to try and figure out some kind of demo where while I'm presenting, I can have them like walk around the Mars VR research station and actually like have them tour, like open up the hatchet, walk inside, put on a spacesuit, whatever else. So I'm going to experiment with that too, just because I want them to be able to experience it. I'll also have a table set up outside of the conference where I'll have VR headset set up so that they could actually put it on and then experience it as well. I'm not able to do that on stage just because of some of the the cord requirements. I'll be like plugged into a wall.
Yeah.
So I'm setting it up at a panel instead. Yeah.
It's risky to do it live on stage.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just feel like there's so many options for me to just walk off the stage. Probably not going to be my best luck.
Having it available for them to try out is great, and it's something for them to, off to the side, and something that we've done at a lot of our events, including the one we just had in Las Vegas, and of course our conference coming up at ASU next month. Yeah.
Absolutely. Amazing.
Awesome.
Sydney, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
You mentioned in your communication to me that this was going to be kind of a fireside chat, which set a tone. Is that the conference you're speaking of, where you're going to treat it as a personal interview, not interview, but interaction with the people? Is that how you're feeling this is going to unfold?
Well, to start off with, they asked me to do a keynote, but I'm in the middle of selling my company right now. So I said, I do not have time to memorize a whole speech and a 30-minute keynote. Can we do a fireside? So I gave them the content of what I want to be talking about and gave them all of the questions to ask me. I know my company, I know Mars Society. I can talk extensively about what VR and the tech it's going to do. But I'm getting together my list of questions. I want to have some kind of presentation. So a fireside chat is going to be, it's kind of like a presentation, but you have somebody guiding you so that you don't have to memorize the whole thing or have some kind of teleprompter.
Thank you very much. I'm glad you brought that out. I hope everyone's listening to this, because when you're dealing with a client, which we all do when we approach audiences and organizers of programs, there's nothing wrong with contacting them ahead of time and giving them a list of questions that you feel you are comfortable with and responding to, and maybe giving them some questions that you feel like you like to ask the audience, to give someone a heads up. So it brings the audience, I like this, Sydney, brings the audience to you when you ask questions, and maybe you don't even have all of the answers. Maybe you don't have all of the questions. So I like the idea of the fireside chat. Is there anything else you'd like to offer us on that aspect of how you're going to deliver this talk before we move on to the next segment?
No, I'm just controlling the questions, having it guided so that I don't have to memorize the whole speech. And the slides and the demonstrations behind me will be that of my own companies, and then a little bit of the Mars VR as well.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you, Ed, and thank you, Sydney, for presenting those ideas, especially in a short time that I've given you. Now for the breaking news. Okay, you've heard about MTI, possibly, not MIT, which is Massachusetts Institute of Technology, but MTI, the Mars Technology Institute. Not as big of a difference as one might think, because both are on life-changing missions. MTI is probably one of the most important branches of the Mars Society since its inception back in 1998. Of course, the Mars Society Ambassador Program being another. MTI is something we all need to know about and be able to simply convey its mission, because in your programs, you're going to be asked about it. So without any further ado, James Burke, Roger, I know you've been studying up on this as well. I've been looking into it as well. James, with no time constraints, because there's so much to share.
Well, I actually have a time constraint. I have a 2:30, so I have about 11 minutes. But
okay, well,
what I could do is I'll talk a little bit about this, and then we can take some time and you guys can ask me some questions. Yeah, and then Roger can also talk about it after me.
Perfect. Yeah. Go right ahead. We'll pick it up after.
All right. So you guys may have seen our recent podcast, Red Planet Live, where Robert came on, and also Alan Boyle from GeekWire. He's a journalist that I've actually known him personally for a long time. He used to be the main space journalist for NBC on MSNBC, their online platform. So anyway, we announced the Mars Technology Institute. It's a project that Robert and I have been quietly working on for several months. Ever since he left his company, Pioneer Astronautics, he sold it to Voyager, which is a large space company that Dylan Taylor owns. So Robert's gonna lead up this new initiative to set up an institution that will develop the technologies and the research areas that we need to settle Mars. And all of them will also have applications here on Earth. So part of the Institute is also trying to monetize, start companies, and financially support all of these efforts, as well as colonizing Mars, settling Mars. So basically, the way it's going to work right now is it's a nonprofit. It's part of the Mars Society. It's an area of the Mars Society. And we're going to set up a for-profit lab. And we're going to locate that in either Seattle, where I live, or Denver, Colorado, where the Mars Society has historically been run out of, and that's where Robert lives. And so, but we're also talking to researchers and partners around the world that will be part of this institute wherever we have a physical location. We may end up partnering with a university or other existing institution as well. The research areas that we're focusing on are biotech, and specifically growing food on Mars. That's a huge area for us. And then other areas we're focusing on are AI and robotics. One of those applications is ore processing in space, because that's a heavy lift robotic kind of application. And then the final area is nuclear power and that type of nuclear engineering, which Robert actually has a deep background in. That's what he has his degrees in. His degrees from University of Washington, which is in Seattle as well. So he has connections there. I'm supporting it as well. I've been pretty active in Seattle, not only being the Mars Society chapter leader in Seattle since the 90s. I worked at Microsoft for 20 years. And more recently, I started a nonprofit with a few other people called Space Northwest that is meant to advocate for space companies moving to the Seattle area or starting new companies. Also transitioning people that are in other industries like traditional aerospace, which is heavy in Seattle, and the tech industry, into new space companies. So that organization also is going to help support this project of trying to set up the Institute. Through that, I've got a lot of connections in Washington State, including the city governments and the state government. And they're all aware of the Mars Technology Institute, and they're all just really eager and ready to support this. We also have support in Colorado, and there's a lot going on in Colorado Springs, you know, in that area as well. I just had a meeting today with some folks at Texas that are associated with Texas A&M and the NASA Johnson campus there. So anyway, there's a lot of opportunities that are coming out of this. We're going to talk a lot more about it at our conference at Arizona State on October 5th through 8th. If you can't attend in person, you can watch it online. If you join the Mars Society, you can get into the conference app that lets you network with everyone and watch the sessions and get information on them. So I definitely recommend having people join the Mars Society. And as long as they're a member, paid active member, they'll get instructions on how to access the conference app. But everyone can always just go to the Mars Society website or our social media platforms to watch the live stream those 4 days. So with that, I see some questions in there. There's a question, how are we going to fund this? And it is a big project. We kind of look at it as it's a $10 million project, or it's nothing, you know, like we're kind of going big on this. And so there's 6 different sources of funding, and you can read about it in our announcement that's on our website. We'll go more into detail on that. And we do have a PowerPoint deck that we can send people. We're going to post some of that online. We are going to go after investors through the lab, but we're also taking donations initially just for seed funding for this. We will ultimately have a stock offering that's like for everyone, but that's probably like a year or 2 away. So it's a long-term, it's not really like a short-term play. It's not a short-term investment. This is like an institution that we hope is going to be around for a long time. And it's going to work on projects that might not bear fruit for a long time too. So it's not really for investors that are interested in short-term gain, which is most investors. So that's going to be one challenge that we're going to have, with talking about this and trying to get funding through that route. But we're also going to pursue grant funding. We're going to pursue partnerships with NASA and other space agencies and other companies. So there's a lot. And then when we start companies inside the Mars Technology Institute, we're kind of looking at that as like the Y Combinator model, where you help a startup incubate and accelerate. The lab would own equity in the startup, and so if the startup took off, that would kind of go back to the lab in the form of dividends or having stock in the company that's successful. So that's another way that we look long term at how this would get funded.
James, as a timeline, a guide for all of us, when will you actually sublet some of this experimentation out to other organizations and support them before you actually start the core of the MTI? Or is this something that can actually pick up and get going without, maybe with just some of the money on board?
Well, I look at it as we're going to host a bunch of researchers, just like we host our crews at the Mars Desert Research Station, and they come and bring their own research projects. The Institute is going to host a bunch of existing researchers, and we're going to try to help them get funding, and they're going to work under the auspices of the Institute. And that's going to go for no matter how much seed money we get, so we already have, if you look at the information we're going to put out, we have several advisors on board already. Some of them are going to speak at the conference, and they're already working on research areas that are cutting edge and have cutting edge work.
I know your information, you mentioned you have 12 advisors. Are those people on board, or you're looking for 12 advisors?
No, we have about that many on board. I don't know the exact number right now, because
Okay.
Robert's doing a lot of that.
All right. Who else has a question about this?
Yeah, I got a question.
Yeah, John.
On that. Yeah, one of the things that I saw with some of the analog research stations is, they've been pretty well cobbled together with tech that we're familiar with here on planet Earth, obviously. But one of the things that occurs to me is how tightly you could integrate the MTI with some of those facilities and start upgrading those facilities with some of that technology and using that, not to just keep the analog stations the way they are, but get them moving towards something that would be a case or working example of something that could actually be installed on Mars.
Yeah, we actually have a project running right now just like that. It's the spirulina reactor that was set up in May, and it's still running over the summer. It's a colony of spirulina algae that we can take some out, and it's floating in water. It's got a bunch of LED lights around it. It's got a bunch of cameras and measurements sensors on it, captures data. It's a smart device, so it can fluctuate its power level usage based on what the solar array is doing at that moment. So we've already been doing that experiment, and that's an example of us using the Mars Desert Research Station for testing out real hardware or science experiments you would have on Mars. So we'll do a lot more of that, coupling the institution that we set up for the MTI and the analog stations. We'll have lots of interchange and opportunities to help each other. They'll be part of the same organization, essentially.
Great. Bringing it down to the human level, I especially enjoyed looking at how the food preparation might unfold to actually not only create food that has protein and value and those life-giving elements, but it will also be the focus to have it gourmet food. Is that an emphasis?
I mean, yeah, I think the work we do now at the MDRS to get the food for each of the crews, we do use a lot of dehydrated food and ingredients that you would have, shelf-stable ingredients that we think you'd have in a Mars settlement, stuff that can last on the shelf for like 10 or 30 years, depending on what it is. So you'd be able to ship a bunch of that to Mars so that there's never going to be a risk of them not running out of food. They'll have years and years of backup. through that. And so, but also taking those raw ingredients, so to speak, and making things that are really like, you know, resemble fresh food or identical to fresh food, because you're synthesizing some of those ingredients, using plants a lot, growing plants, and using the plant products you can create from those. You know, all that is stuff that this institute is going to work on.
Okay, so Impossible Burger has a place there then. That's great. That's good.
I think one of the bigger challenges is going to be, how do you deal with the perchlorates in the Martian soils? And if we can develop some technology that can help mitigate some of that, that's a huge thing for it.
That's key. Perchlorates and radiation protection are key. Yeah.
Other questions before James has to depart?
Sure, James. Yeah, I was just curious. I know you guys have your hearts set on Colorado or Seattle, but have you put any thought into looking at former U.S. Air Force bases that have closed? You got some, impressive facilities that are vacant. So that's my comment or question.
It's a good idea. That might be something we look at. Yeah, I mean, right now we're trying to go where we have a lot of support to get this up and running, and a lot of opportunity, because there's a lack of something like this in the area. For example, Seattle has a pretty deep tech industry, but there's not a NASA center in Seattle, which is kind of, unusual. So, this would fill kind of that gap. I got an email from someone at University of Washington that saw the announcement we put out last week, and was saying this would be great because maybe they'd work with NASA and kind of bring NASA to the area.
Anyone else on that at the moment?
Yeah, I do have a quick question for James. I was wondering, for Mars, you did mention colonization. What is the vision beyond survival? And I don't know whether that is one of the areas of focus for MTI.
Well, Robert is coming out with a new book that talks exactly about that, about what the new society is going to be on Mars. It's called The New World on Mars. You can pre-order it on Amazon, and it comes out in February. And I've read some of it, and the MTI is part of what he's talking about in there. And basically the inventor economy that we think you'd have on Mars. We're trying to build that now within the MTI, build it now on Earth, get it up and running. Thank you so much. I really appreciate seeing you guys on this call, and thanks James Melton and Ed and Sydney, and I'll talk to you guys soon, and hope come to the conference or watch it online.
Okay, great, James. Thanks so much for taking a moment with us. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, let me push this forward just a little bit more, because and anyone can pick up on this, and we would appreciate the input. We know we have technology, SpaceX and other entrepreneurial organizations moving forward to build a technology to get us to Mars. But what really is needed which is what MTI is an institution devoted to developing technologies that will allow us to, once we get there, actually live on Mars. And one of the other key ingredients is a situation I face a lot, and I'm sure many people do. What it will also make possible is for humanity to become a multi-planet species. And it will definitely dismiss the false claims that Mars advocates don't give a darn about Earth and about the Earth people or the needs of the people on Earth. A lot of people look at the mission to Mars as a way to find another home other than Earth. But I think this MTI concept, which is phenomenal, I'm not sure why we didn't really act on it before, is going to be one of the most important elements in the Mars Society. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree that that idea that it's we're going to escape the Earth's problems is completely wrong. I mean, Columbus wasn't trying to escape Europe's problems, or they didn't wait until they solved Europe's problems before they set sail. we're going to go to Mars to learn to live better on the Earth. We're going to use it as a workshop to come up with better ways of having society. There's a lot of problems on Earth that we don't want to take with us. People being one of the big ones. So how do we take people that go to Mars that solve problems and not create new problems? So at every level, everything we do, it's an opportunity to come back to Earth and find ways of doing it all better.
Yes, I agree. And their focus is, of course, on biotech, foods, making food something that's easily accessible on Mars. And that's a big one. Now, biotech, AI, artificial intelligence, and nuclear power energy are the three elements that it's actually going to focus on. The MTI actually focuses on that. But the main element, as James pointed out so accurately, is the food element, is something we can handle with, I won't say a nominal financial investment, but certainly a financial investment that's palatable. Whereas nukes, on the other hand, or even AI, is pretty well handled by the corporate world right now, and they will have some input on how we do this. So your thoughts on the focus, your thoughts on, go ahead, Ed.
Yeah, I've heard the old argument, well, we have all these problems on our planet. There's the economy, there's poverty, there's racism, there's sexism, there's dictatorship, there's the climate, and that's all very true. And they'll say, how can we go to Mars before we solve all those problems? Then I usually ask the person, well, will we be solving all those problems in the next 50 years or so? And they're talking, before we can go to Mars, they basically are saying we have to establish some kind of utopia on planet Earth. It ain't going to happen that way. We're not going to set up some kind of utopia, capitalist utopia, socialist utopia, utopia, whatever, any more than we are on our home planet. This will always remain our home planet. Even when we become interstellar, we're going to be watching videos of what life was like on our home planet, what the home planet is like today, hundreds of years later, when I think our planet's going to become pristine with clean air, clean water, no poverty. All that's going to happen in the future. But us going to Mars will help us establish that kind of home planet, because we'll learn a lot from Mars, like we have from Venus, like we will from interstellar space, on how to improve our home planet. It's not one or the other, it's both.
Sure. And one of the challenges about MTI is the investment, of course. Everybody knows, I see Sydney smiling. Everybody knows that when you dig into your pocketbook, your wallets, and start putting out money for something, in this endeavor, I'm saying things that you all realize and we all understand as ambassadors, but the long-term investment is what these people need to be looking for, not the short-term gain. I always talk about it in my programs, ice cream now and bicycle later. You give a child the opportunity of having an ice cream cone now or a bicycle later, more than 9 chances out of 10, they're going to take the ice cream now.
Today.
But the adult looking at the long term, maybe a bicycle later is not a bad idea. Maybe I can postpone my gratification. This is the same with long-term investments, which we're going to need with this particular issue. And one of the things we'll need to sell on this, if you want to use the word sell, sometimes that's a negative word for a lot of people, is Mars needs to be able to sustain itself with its inventions, its ideas, and gain proprietary rights of what they're doing. The the intellectual properties is what we will be able to sell. We can't be shipping things back and forth from Mars to Earth. That's too laborious, too costly. So we have to look at the inventions, what the knowledge, the intelligence factor of how things are developed. So your thoughts on that? Dean, Roger, whomever?
I've built a lot of companies. I've built 12 and I've sold 7. And I'm fairly confident that most of the people that you're going to find that will invest into companies that are born out of this Mars Technology Institute, there's 3. There's Space VC, which is led by Jonathan Lacoste. There's the one from the Singularity guy, Peter Diamandis, his X Prize. They do some interesting ones, and those might revolve around food. And there's one more out of Australia, and they focus on space venture capital. I think you're going to have a notoriously hard time raising capital for projects that involve research. I think the best mode of getting money for this thing is going to be to go to universities and to go to governments. City governments are going to love to have this in their back corner to say, hey, we're going to space, we're super futuristic. We've got a cool building that we've completely redone, and check it out. But I don't think that private investors are going to bite on this, because your time horizon, I mean, the venture capital model works because it's a 5 to 10 year model of an exit with a 20% return. This is not going to be the same model. You can't, I mean, unless like they're going to get paid in dividends on social impact and social good. We haven't figured out that system yet. So I would say, just as a word of advice from someone that has raised a lot of money and has also done it bootstrapped, I've built companies every single which way. I think their best avenue is to go through universities and city governments, because otherwise your investors are going to be more of a problem than a help.
True. I like the idea they're also formulating is that the Mars Technology Institute is the nonprofit. The Mars Technology Lab is the corporate structure, by which is a for-profit organization, and donating to the Mars Technology Institute as a nonprofit donation will allow us to support one another. So that's an issue that's beyond my pay grade on how to handle that, but it looks like it can fund itself. I'm thinking that it's not only going to be an engine of invention, but it will be an engine of finance, and eventually will self-finance itself to finally settle Mars. And that's the ultimate goal, of course. Go ahead, please.
So one initial thought I had was just bringing different groups that support small businesses together to focus their support on some of these new ventures that would be set up in your lab through the incubator or accelerator project. For example, if you do that, you know, some of these new companies may be able to get money to rent space in an incubator facility from all of these organizations that are already set up for new businesses. It would just take some advocating to bring them together. Okay. And that would help, you know, cover some basic expenses. That's initial thought.
Sure. And all of these ideas will coalesce and become focused. What I really like about this MTI, the Mars Technology Institute, is it is bringing a focus to one issue, the settling of Mars, and not putting aside what else needs to be done. But when we focus our minds together, we have power. It's like, you know, it's like a magnet. We have 2 steel cubes, both of the same size, the same weight, the same shape. For all intents and purposes, they look identical from the outer source, but one of them is different. One is magnetized and one is not magnetized. So what's the difference between the two? The unmagnetized cube has a structure with molecules going every which way, up and down, hither and thither. The magnetized cube has a focus, a direction, a power. It's developed a particular focus on all going in one direction. And as that produces a power, so can a focused mind, a focused piece of metal. I mean, and they're actually focused on getting this done to a specific purpose. So that pleases me enormously. Roger, I see your eyes and mind blinking and whirling and twirling here. What's going on in there?
Well, lots of things. I love what everyone's saying. I'm making lots of notes. I put the link there to Zubrin's interview. And he talks about food being key, and then energy production, and then dealing with labor issues, which could be robotics and AI, or efficiency, or what do we not need to build? We spend a lot of effort on Earth doing things that don't really get us anything. We need to focus on. We need to put more on our to-don't list sometimes. Elon says the best part is no part. So what parts that we put time into can we do without? I see the Mars city designs. I see all these tall spires and individual buildings, and I think, well, that's like a radiator surface. And Mars is incredibly cold all the time. We don't want to live on a radiator where we're constantly sending our precious heat out. We want to build clusters. We want to live in lumps. Are they beehives? Are they hot and uncomfortable, or are they beautiful like a crystal inside, like a geode? Can we make new kinds of habitats that are Mars specific that help? Someone mentioned perchlorates earlier. And perchlorates are a problem on Earth. They're sometimes bound into salts. If they get into the soil, they're bad for most of the plants we grow. But there are specific organisms we found, and Wikipedia says there's 40 distinct microorganisms that love perchlorates. They eat them, and they produce oxygen. So I think someone should be looking at farming some of those. It's a very Mars-specific project. It shouldn't take a lot of investment, if you can do it in a vent hood in a laboratory somewhere, but find out which organisms we could bring along to Mars, bring in contaminated Martian soil, or natural Martian soil that has perchlorates in it, process that into soil we can use and also free oxygen. It would be a wonderful byproduct. So we have to look and see what things we can have that serve both Earth and Mars, and what things that are going to serve Mars specifically, because we need to support Mars and keep that project going so that we can have all the other benefits that'll come back to Earth.
Yes.
Lots
Roger,
to think about.
Excellent.
I got a quick question for Roger.
Yes, Gunnar.
A while back, I saw Elon Musk had started another company with his brother doing vertical farms. That was the only time that I'd seen something like that, where a company was working on something that had a bioregenerative life support system application and was working on the infrastructure component. Do you know of any other companies that have been doing that?
I didn't know Elon. Elon's involved in a lot of things I don't know about, I'm sure. I had no idea he was involved in vertical farming. Here in Los Angeles, I know there are quite a few companies that are actively growing food. They're providing to local restaurants and stores. And it's a very Mars-worthy technology. We're taking electricity and turning it pretty directly into food. To your question, it's not something I've looked into, but it's definitely something we should be doing better here on Earth and on Mars.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for your time and response.
Sure.
Excellent ideas. I listened to that lecture also that Zubrin gave on August 9th, and he talked in there about a social solidarity, which perked my ears up strongly, because I'm all about the human element and the human factor in making all this work. Because if we can't communicate with each other, if we block communication, we don't talk to people, and we can't work together as a cohesive team, then we're not going to make it anywhere. So he said there are two ways to produce solidarity. One is by going with a small colony and all of like mind and working on a similar or cohesive project. And the other would be the melting pot, where we have everybody there and we sift out our ideas and our agreements and disagreements through communication. Anybody have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, James, a few thoughts on that are that some of the living arrangements are going to be really work dependent, as the opportunities to go in and go into an area that's favorable for a particular type of ore processing, for example. There's going to be a lot of different areas that will be close to places like the Valles Marineris, where it would be potentially possible to use some of the boring companies' technology to build tunnels into the side of the cliff faces, and then that takes care of a lot of the insulation issues that Roger was referring to with some of that. But I think a lot of it's going to just be organic growth, and then you've got flat areas that are going to be potentially the spaceports, where you've got large ships coming in for landing that are going to be requiring a different type of organization to them than say an area that is mainly just places for residential housing and that type of thing. So I think there's going to be a lot of variety depending on the local terrain that's available for the specific purpose that organization or group is there for.
I appreciate that, John. Dean Arvidson, as a physics professor for so many years, you're very used to being put on the spot by your students. I know some of your students. Just to capsulize on this aspect of the human element involved in this whole picture, just share a couple of your thoughts on how this Mars Technology Institute might help focus in that area.
The one thought that occurred to me, and Roger touched on it, I think some other people, as the MTI goes forward, it seems important to not duplicate research that might be being done elsewhere. For instance, if Musk is doing vertical farming, that sounds a little bit like an overlap with the emphasis on the biotechnology on producing food. And just crossed my mind if there's some way to collaborate, or not collaborate, but to share discoveries, so to speak, and so you don't duplicate your efforts and waste time in that regard. But people have thought of all these things well before. Your example of magnetism, I'd like to, Jim, where all the molecules are aligned magnetically, then it makes a big difference. That's the key in a way to success, and it works for the individual. The more we're aligned, and then it works collectively, the more the group gets aligned, and then we're more effective, individually and collectively. That's what it's all about.
Thank you so much for that input. To sum this up, if I might, because we like to be cognizant of time, I'm looking at Ginger Shen here. She's always eager to add some points. Ginger, in looking in the future, and what the Mars Society ambassadors are all about is making presentations, connecting, going to events, interacting with people, and sharing with the general public what in the world are we doing going to Mars, and a good substantial reason why. Do you have any particular plans for yourself for the upcoming year that could encourage or give us some insights into how we might proceed?
Yes, thanks, James. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, So actually, I think the best practice to do is to take the convenience for each one. Like me, I am still at school working on my dissertation as a PhD student. So what is my expertise is about research and talking to people. So for this academic year, I was thinking that there are two things I would like to, like two communities, especially two groups of people in communities that I would like to reach out to. First is that the students at schools, middle schools, high schools, I mean, even primary schools, but to integrate some science education knowledge. Like I would like to, even over lunch, I talked to Alida that I would like to take out some parts of Dr. Zubrin's book, some simple math questions, and then give a 40 to an hour lecture to the kids and to let them know, hey, this is simple. Let's figure out the math. Let's figure out the physics questions to know something about us, about the society, to let them know that, hey, what we are doing. That's one group. And the other group is to reach out to senior people. I like to talk to some senior people in the recreation centers, especially those people retired and they are veterans. I was performing an instrument before for them. And I always like to talk to those senior people. And I think asking them about, hey, what do you think about Mars, going to Mars? It would be interesting to learn something or hear their feedback also. That's my plan.
Excellent, Ginger. Thank you. And I know that you and Alida have connected. I'm very pleased. Alida, are you with us, or do I just see a solo picture there?
No, I'm right here.
Oh, excellent. Well, do me a favor then. Is it the Florida Institute of Technology that you're both attending?
Yes.
And you met because of the ambassadorship with Mars? Is that pretty much how you met?
Yes. Yes.
That's wonderful. And you just discovered by chance Alida from Dubai and Ginger from wherever, I'm not sure, because of
in Mongolia, China. Our first
Mongolia.
speaker.
So you're
Yeah.
familiar with her Mongolian initiative as well.
In Mongolia, so it's still part of China. I think it must be very familiar of that geography, that region. So I'm the Inner Mongolia, still China,
Excellent.
not the country.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Thank you. And Alida, can you give us just a brief overview of your vision for yourself in the next year or so?
Okay, so from last semester, I remember I shared the event that me and Ginger and a couple of my friends did at the local church. So that was a huge success. So the Arab community, Arab American community in Florida reached out and they were like, would you do another STEM day with like focus on Mars and everything? So I did reach out to Ginger and all of my friends. So we would be going to Orlando. If any of the other ambassadors are in the area, I would like to plan it together with them and kind of like host it in their community soon. Oh, okay. That's great. Yeah, so that's one plan. The second one is I got the Global Rising Stars Award. So I'm going to IAC. So I figured I could represent Mars Society there too. So that's pretty much from the 2nd to the 6th of October. So yeah, those are the two plans right now. And then once I come back, I will figure out more plans. That's the goal for now.
Excellent. Hey, thank you so much for sharing that. I'm glad to have you both on board. And I really appreciate your comments intermittently throughout the year, throughout the months. As I do from everyone, it's important that we connect with each other so we know what we're actually doing and we can learn from one another. Any other parting comments before we close the program? Anyone at all?
Hey, this is Ronnie.
Yeah, hi, Ron.
Hey, we got 3 weeks to the Mars Society convention. I'm
Yes.
going to be there in person. How many else year is going to be in person. We got Roger, Ed, Thorsten. Well, looking forward to meeting you guys.
And they'll probably all watch it virtually as well, I'm sure. So, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us today, and for all of you ambassadors who are helping to bring our vision into view. On to Mars. This is James Melton. Over and out.